This is the sound of the earth speaking. Listen closely and you will hear her story. Many moons ago, in a quiet house by the river, on the edge of an ancient forest, there lived a young man. For him, life had become too loud. The chatter of people, the hum of cars and machines, the clatter of construction and commerce, all of it was a discordant cacophony in his ears. He walked out into the countryside, but even there the noise followed him. Voices drifted across the fields. Television sets spilled their light and sound onto the darkness, and music thumped from unseen speakers. Everywhere he went, the young man carried a piece of the noise within him. It clung to him like a shroud. So he decided to leave it all behind. He sold his house and possessions, gave his money to the poor, and moved to a small cottage by the river on the edge of the ancient forest. There he could be alone with his thoughts and find some peace at last. In the beginning, the silence was unnerving. It pressed against him like a physical force. It was the silence of the empty woods, the silence of the windless fields, the silence of the star-studded sky. But as the days turned into weeks, and the young man continued to walk among the trees, something remarkable happened. The silence began to open him up. He surrendered himself to its vastness and discovered a new way of being, a life without noise. At first, the young man heard only the sounds of the natural world around him. The rustle of the trees, the murmur of the river, the chirp of crickets, the distant call of a bird. These were the sounds of the earth speaking in her own language. And as he listened, he began to understand her a little better. The cracking of branches told him when a deer had been grazing nearby. The splash in the river revealed the passage of a fish. The sighing of the wind through the trees was a lullaby at the end of the day. All around him, the earth was alive with activity, and yet there was no sound to disturb his solitude. The young man reveled in this newfound peace. Every morning he would step outside his cottage and greet the rising sun. He would feel the warmth on his skin and the wind on his face and listen to the symphony of the forest. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, he would walk along the riverbank, watching the water flow and the dragonflies dance. In the afternoon, he would sit on a fallen log and read his books, or he would lie on the soft grass and watch the clouds drift by. As the sun began its slow descent, he would return to his cottage, feeling a deep sense of contentment. He had found what he was looking for. He had found peace. But as the weeks turned into months, the young man began to notice something strange. There were moments when the silence was broken by a sound that was not of this world. At first, he dismissed it as a figment of his imagination, a trick of his memory, or perhaps a symptom of his loneliness. But the sound persisted, and he found himself longing for it, searching for it in the stillness of the forest. It was a low, resonant hum, like the distant thrumming of a giant harp. Sometimes it was joined by a high-pitched whine, like the cry of a lonely wolf. Other times there was a rhythmic tapping, like the slow beating of a drum. The young man tried to identify these sounds, to place them within the natural order of things, but he could not. They were unlike anything he had ever heard before. They did not belong to the earth, the wind, the trees, or the river. One day, as the young man was walking along the riverbank, he heard the sound again. It was the low, resonant hum, and it seemed to be coming from the water itself. He stopped and listened intently. The hum grew louder, and he could feel the vibration in his feet, in his legs, in his entire body. Then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. The young man stood there for a long time, listening to the silence. When he finally turned to go home, he noticed something strange. The sun was setting in the west, but in the east, the sky was filled with the soft glow of twilight. He had been listening to the river so intently that he had not noticed the sun's descent. He quickened his pace, eager to reach the safety of his cottage. As he approached his home, he saw a dark shape moving in the forest. It was a large animal, like a bear or a wolf, and it was moving towards him. The young man's heart began to race, and he instinctively took a step back. But as the animal drew closer, he saw that it was not a bear or a wolf. It was a woman. She was tall and slender, with skin the color of bark and eyes like polished stones. Her hair was a tangle of vines and leaves, and she wore a dress made of moss and twigs. The woman stopped in front of the young man, and he could feel the power emanating from her. She was not a creature of this world, he realized, but a spirit of the forest, and she had come to him because of the sounds he had been hearing. "You have heard the song of the earth," she said, her voice like the rustling of leaves. "And now she calls you to her." The young man hesitated, torn between his desire to understand the sounds he had been hearing and his fear of what lay beyond the familiar world. But as he looked into the forest, he saw not danger, but beauty, not darkness, but light. He took a deep breath and stepped forward. "I am ready," he said. The spirit of the forest reached out her hand and led the young man into the forest. The trees parted before them, revealing a path that shimmered with an otherworldly light. They walked in silence for a long time, and the young man felt a sense of wonder growing within him. At the end of the path, they came to a clearing. In the center of the clearing was a large oak tree, and around the tree were gathered the spirits of the earth, air, fire, and water. They had been the ones making the sounds the young man had heard, and they had summoned him to their presence. "You have listened to our songs," said the spirit of the earth, "and now we will teach you our language." The spirits welcomed the young man and shared their wisdom with him. They showed him the interconnectedness of all things, the interdependence of all life, and the beauty of the natural world. The young man listened intently, his mind expanding with each passing moment. As the days turned into weeks, the young man learned more about the language of the earth, the sounds of the forest, the whispers of the wind. He discovered that the earth was alive with magic, that the trees had spirits, and that the rivers flowed with ancient wisdom. He learned that he was part of this world, interconnected with all living things, and that he had a responsibility to protect and preserve it. When the time came for the young man to return to the human world, the spirits of the earth gave him a gift, a silver pendant that contained the essence of the forest. They told him that whenever he felt lost or alone, he could hold the pendant in his hand and close his eyes, and he would hear the sounds of the forest, the whispers of the trees, the murmur of the river, and know that he was always connected to the earth and her magic. And so the young man returned to the human world, forever changed by his experience. He carried the sounds of the forest in his heart and the wisdom of the earth in his mind. He knew that he could never go back to the life he had lived before. But he also knew that he had found his true purpose in life, to share the message of the earth with others and to help them see the beauty and wonder of the natural world. For the earth is always speaking, and all we need to do is listen. Many years passed, and the young man grew old. His hair turned grey, and his beard flowed down his chest. But his eyes still held the wonder of youth, for he had seen the magic of the earth and heard the song of the forest. And he knew that, as long as the earth stood, there would be beauty and wonder to behold. So he spent his days walking among the trees, talking to the birds, and listening to the river flow. And when he closed his eyes, he could hear the voices of the earth, the air, the fire, and the water, whispering their ancient secrets to him. And he knew that he was home.